Example number 3. We have x squared minus 2x minus 48. Once again, name your a, b, and c values and multiply together your a and your c. That will be your product number. Your sum number will be your b value. So we're going to be looking for a product of negative 48 and a sum of negative 2. Think about factoring to get a negative, multiplying to get a negative. You need one positive and one negative. You could list all of the options, but because our sum needs to be negative, I'm going to just put our negative on our larger number. So 1 times negative 48, 2 times negative 24, 3 times negative 16, 4 times negative 12, 6 times negative 8. If you choose to put the negative on the smaller number, and when you're finding your sums, only find positive sums, but you will find a positive 2, just switch your signs. However, by putting it on the larger number, it will help you get a negative sum. Go through and add these factors together to now find the sum that you need. Remember, we're looking for a sum of negative 2. The pair that will work is the 6 and the negative 8. That adds to be a negative 2. So we're going to use 6 and negative 8 to break apart the negative 2. Don't forget your variables on those terms. I typically recommend when you have the option of putting the negative number first, always do that so you don't have to factor out a negative. I'm still going to show it with the negative as the second term so we can practice factoring out a negative. But you could do x squared minus 8x plus 6x minus 48. This would keep you from having to factor out a negative from that second group. It does not matter the order of those terms. Like I said, I'm going to show it with the negative in the first group. So I'm going to put it in the order so that we'll need to factor out the negative. But either way, we'll factor and factor correctly. Let's factor the groups. Like we talked about, that second group has a negative unless you chose to go with the first method. Factoring out a negative from that second group, you have 8x and a positive 48, remembering that the signs will become opposite of what they were in the step above. So negative 8 becomes a positive, negative 48 becomes a positive. Now let's factor the groups. An x squared and a 6x have an x in common, always looking at the smallest exponent. X divided into x squared, we subtract the exponent, so it leaves us x to the first. X dividing into 6x, again you can subtract the exponent. 1 take away 1 is just 0. X to the 0 is just 1, so 6 times 1 is 6. X and 6 have no other common factors, so we'll go to the second group. Look for a variable first. 8x and 48 do not have a variable in common. Notice 48 has no variable, so you can't factor one out of the entire group. Now let's do the prime factorization. A 2 will go into both terms. Two goes into 8 4 times, so we have 4x, and 2 goes into 48 24 times. Continue to divide by primes. 2 goes into 4x 2x times, and 2 goes into 24 12 times. We can divide by one more 2. 2 goes into 2x 1x times, and 2 goes into 12 6 times. Because now we see our leftovers match, you could feel confident that you're on the right track. Let's write this in factored form. Our GCF of the first group was x, our leftovers, x, go back up and get your sign, plus 6. Don't forget your negative that you already factored out. Our GCF we'll get from multiplying 2 times 2 times 2. That is 8. Be careful that you multiply and not add to find that GCF. Our leftovers, x, again get your sign from above, plus 6. Because we correctly factored out the negative, our sign in our leftovers is correct. So your final step is to write it as your two sets of parentheses, x minus 8, x plus 6, or you could also write x plus 6 times x minus 8. Now practice one on your own. Number 4, press pause to practice this on your own. Check your work for number 4. You would have multiplied 6 with negative 2 to find a product of negative 12. Your sum number is negative 1. So the factors that give you negative 12 and add to give you negative 1 would be 3 and negative 4. Using those numbers, separate the negative x. Don't forget your variables on this step. Group the terms 6x squared and 3x and negative 4x minus 2. Because that second group has a negative as the first term, we need to factor that out first. Find the GCF of each group, noticing that each time our leftovers is the same. Your GCF of the first group should have been 3x. Your GCF of the second group would be 2. Because of the way we set it up, we had a negative in front of the 2. Our final answer, written as two sets of parentheses, is 2x plus 1 and 3x minus 2. Keep in mind, depending on how you set up those two terms, 3x and negative 4x, if you switch them, your work throughout here would also be switched. But your final answer should still be the same, 2x plus 1 times 3x minus 2, or again, those could be switched, having 3x minus 2 and 2x plus 1